Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Wednesday night, August the 27th. I'm glad to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention. It's up to us. And we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And, I appreciate everybody who's tuning into my shows. I've done, probably about 750 shows. And started this November 2009. So November, 2011 will be 2 years. So I'm hoping to make it to November of this year. Right, that'll be 2 years. Thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. I can't tell you how much it means to me to have people tuning into my shows. I have so many people tuning into my shows. And I know a lot of you are the same, people, my friends and people who support me, and other people I don't even know who you are who are tuning into my shows. And I really appreciate everybody taking the time to follow me along here on this journey and, to be a part of this with me. And, it's been a hard haul, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to be part of my life. And this has been it's been an interesting couple of years. It certainly has helped me in my healing journey, and it's helped me to, to gain confidence in speaking about child abuse and child abuse prevention, because it's really what I want to do for the rest of my life, and talk publicly about child abuse. So, it's a very sensitive subject, and you have to listen to your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse in all of my shows. You have to listen at your own discretion and know what's good for you to listen to. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows. Have somebody who's older, who's an adult, who can help you make that decision, like parent or caregiver or somebody in your life who can help you make a decision whether you should be listening age appropriately. Because my shows are definitely not for younger children. It's all about stopping child abuse, but I have a lot of adult material on these shows, and I believe in protecting children at all times. And so if you're under the age of 18, have permission to listen to my show, right? And I want to talk tonight about child sexual abuse. I'm talking about this in the evenings here because Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights on my child abuse prevention, human rights abuse prevention is up to us, because it's not talked about enough. Child sexual abuse, people are almost willing now to talk about the other types of abuse, physical, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, and neglect. But you can't find hardly anybody willing to talk about sexual abuse. And it's absolutely horrific, this has absolutely got to stop. The reason we got to talk about it is because 1 in 3 to 4 girls and 1 in 6 to 7 boys are being sexually abused under the age of 18. That's the facts, and that's just what's reported. So it tells you, because there's a lot of it just goes unreported. So there you go. This is horrific, and it needs to stop. And the only way we're going to fix this and solve this is to talk about it. But really what I want to talk about is what child sexual abuse and incest can do to people who have survived it. And I found this information on womensweb.ca, www.womensweb.ca/violence/incest/effects.php. And Women's Web it's a great resource for people who want to find out more about any type of issue, really. But they have a whole lot of great information on here about sexual abuse and child sexual abuse and whatnot. And so that's what I want to talk about here tonight. So make sure that you listen at your own discretion. And this is a graphic show, and this is not suitable for young children. It's not suitable for anybody under the age of 18 without permission to listen to this show from an adult or someone who is responsible for your care and your well-being. And so this is a huge issue for me. I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse and incest, and I used to always say, okay, I was molested as a child. It was very much more comfortable for me to say I was molested as a child, right? Who wants to walk up to them and say, oh, I was raped and sodomized as a child and sexually used as a child? It sounds so much more, so much more socially acceptable, not so much such a taboo thing to say you were molested, because for some reason people want to put a pretty package around this stuff. I was even doing it, by not coming forward and saying, okay, well, I was raped and sodomized as a child. It's just easier for me to say, okay, I suffered sexual abuse and I was molested as a child. So this is the issue, right? This is why we need to talk about this stuff, right? And I'm on my healing journey, and so, this is very important to me. And I had someone actually tell me, what's the big deal about CSA? What's the big deal about child sexual abuse? I'm like, oh, my God. Well, I'll tell you what it's all about. And, so I've taken, the last couple of weeks probably of these shows and actually just talked about child sexual abuse and the issues that surround it regarding the children out here who are being abused sexually right now, and also for adult survivors. And I found this information quite interesting from the Women's Web. I did want to bring this up and talk about it. And this is really all about, what child sexual abuse does to children, and then have, as you grow up as an adult, what people may face. not everyone's going to have the same issues, and everyone will experience the same things. And all of our situations are different, and all children will handle things differently. And it depends on how much support there was in the home. It depends on how long the abuse went on. It depends on the severity of the abuse, the violence involved. It depends on the situation. It depends on everything. So everybody's experience will be different, even though it's child sexual abuse and in whatever form or shape it came in. Really quite sad. And so we all handle things differently. But they were saying that everyone is unique, and effects of child sexual abuse and incest vary from one person to another. The consequences of sexual abuse can impact on every aspect of a survivor's life: emotional, physical, mental, spiritual. Consequences may include self-injurious behaviors, suicidal ideation, alcohol, substance abuse, fear of intimacy, low self-esteem, anger or aggression, anxiety or depression, nightmares and sleep disturbances, eating disorders, ulcers, headaches, or a deviant, dysfunctional, or non-existent sexuality. And for myself, I talk about this stuff on my One Child Abuse Survivor to Another show in the morning, talking about my own healing journey and what I've gone through and what I've had to deal with as an adult survivor of child abuse. And, it's absolutely horrific. Like, I suffer from a lot of this stuff. And I was not only being sexually abused at the age of 8 by my brother, but I had already suffered a lot of physical abuse and verbal, emotional, psychological abuse and neglect from my parents, both of my parents. So, I was already an abused child, and then was sexually abused by my brother. So I was used to being abused, all right? But the issue is that I was not used to being sexually abused. So, when this happened, it really it sent me off into a split situation where my mind actually split. And I had to do that in order to survive. I was already having a hard time surviving in that home anyway. And so I wrote my book, A Life of Death and Redemption. And, that was my blog. It was called Not So Fond Memories Growing Up in an Abusive Home. And started writing that just prior to, October of 2009. And then I started doing the shows on Blog Talk Radio right after that. And because I was just really, I needed to get this stuff out. I wanted people to know what happened to me. And I really was, I was seriously thinking, I don't want to go to my grave with this information, people need to know the truth about this. And the reason why is because I'm willing to talk about it publicly in hopes that it will help other survivors, in hopes that it will help the public to see why this is such an emergency and why we have to stop child abuse of all types, and so I didn't sugarcoat it, I didn't minimize it, I didn't talk a whole lot about this child sexual abuse in my book, A Life of Death and Redemption. And that's because I had these specific memories that would haunt me for my life, and but I couldn't get a clear picture of what happened. And so I didn't want to put anything in the book until I actually did. And I had already written quite a bit about the facts and information that happened throughout my life regarding that child sexual abuse, because it did affect my body, and I was it definitely had its impact on my body. And it was known, when I went for a gynecologist checkup, that I wrote that I was a virgin on the checkup on the information sheet, and they were like, well, you're not a virgin. After the checkup, they were like, do you have something to tell us, because you're not a virgin? And I'm like, oh no, I'm a virgin. They were like, well, no, honey, you were sexually abused as a child. We have all we have what we need here to prove that. And so I was just like, oh, well, no, I'm a virgin, right? Because, this was back before the days where you had to report it, It wasn't mandatory reporting. And I'm sure that they wrote it down in their books. But the thing is this is horrific, that this has affected my life in a huge way. And not only was I abused by my parents, but then to have this happen was just, devastating to me. And I was already trying to survive in this home. It was a nightmare, and this is why I present this stuff out to the public, because I really want people to know what each one of these little kids out here tonight will be going through, and these teenagers, and these preteens, and these, toddlers and babies will be going through tonight, because I'm willing to be a voice and come out and speak about this stuff. And, people say, well, does it make you uncomfortable to talk about it? It's like, not really. It made me a lot more uncomfortable I was much more uncomfortable being abused than I am talking about it. So this is the thing. It's much more comforting me to tell my story, because I was going to go to my grave with this information. My abusers were going to get away with it, which they did. They got away with it, right? My mother's passed away 16 years ago. She was my main abuser. My brother, who sexually abused me at the age of 8, he committed suicide when he was 33. I was 20 years old when he killed himself, and he had been trying to kill himself for years and finally made it. And my dad, who's another one of my abusers, is 80, almost 89 years old, and he's going on 89. He's, he's mentally ill, and he's an old man, and I mean, they all got away with it. And I wasn't the only one abused. I'm the last of 7 children, right, that made it. There was countless others that were born stillborn. There's probably been about 14 kids all in all. But the thing is, or at least 13. But we know of 10 for sure. But the thing is, so 7 of us made it. So I'm the last of 7 children born, and my parents warped and twisted and abused and tried to destroy all of us, not just me. And so I decided, okay, I'm coming forward with this because I'm not going to go to my grave with this information. People need to know what happens to children that are left in homes. My parents were brought up on charges, and the courts actually awarded my mom the fact that we could stay in the home as long as certain things were met. That my parents had to go to counseling, that they had to prove that they weren't going to abuse us. Social services was going to come in and they were going to check on us. We had our own social workers coming in periodically to check on us to make sure that we were not being abused. And this was going on for quite a while. You know what I mean? So my parents, after the social workers stopped coming around, my parents moved to Canada and took off. We left the country, and then the abuse just continued on. And we're just one more case of where people will slip through the cracks and children will be left in the home, and the abuse will just continue on. And the reason they left us in the home was because they didn't feel that it was life-threatening. So it was okay that my parents were beating on us, burning us, torturing us, kicking us around, and their own domestic violence was horrific, beating on each other. Both my parents were very abusive towards each other and sexually violent. My dad was sexually violent towards my mother and towards my sister, my oldest sister. And, it's very sick and twisted and perverse. But the courts let us stay in the home because that was okay, to let your kids be beaten and to beat your children and to hurt your children. And it was fine to do that, as long as there was no threat, to your life, right? My brother said he was afraid to go home. He was afraid. He was afraid of my dad. Because my dad was always threatening to kill us. So the courts, they made, as far as I'm concerned, a very, very wrong decision. And, this is the thing. This is what happens today with so many children out here right now who the system is letting them down. Like, they're slipping through the cracks, and they will die. They will die. And if they don't die, they'll die spiritually. They'll die in every other way. And then they'll have to try to come out of it and try to figure out how to live and how to actually stay alive as an adult. It's very, very tough and tricky, but it's absolutely horrific, and no child should ever have to go through this. So the consequences of this stuff, this has completely affected and twisted my life, and I finally decided to face it 4 years ago so I could live, right? Because I wasn't living, I was just existing. And so, nightmares, sleep disorders, like any of this stuff, this can happen, not to every survivor, but to a lot, right? They said effects may take different forms at different stages of a survivor's life and recovery, and occasionally the effects of having been sexually abused can remain guarded or hidden away. Repression and disassociation are protective mechanisms often used by survivors to keep the memory of their abuse out of their consciousness, and although on the surface these coping mechanisms may appear to shield survivors, over the long term they may prove harmful because they keep survivors from dealing with their pain and trauma, and pain and hurt can then resurface again or be triggered by significant life events. And this is what happened to me because, I had kind of put that behind me, very tucked it away very neatly, didn't think about that rape and sodomy because it was horrific and it was heinous and it was painful and it was everything that was bad and evil to me, I sort of had to deal with certain things like periodically because of it, I was having physical problems, first of all. And second of all, my brother actually admitted to and confessed to the fact that he enjoyed doing what he did to me when I was talking to me on the phone one time when he was committing suicide. He was killing himself, and he was always trying to kill himself. So he had slit his wrists, he was in a bathtub bleeding to death, and he was talking to me and confessing to me on the phone as a 13-year-old 5 years later after the assaults took place, and telling me that he enjoyed what he had done to me, you know what I mean? And so while he was dying, all he could think about was talking to me was the fact that he enjoyed sexually abusing me, raping me, and sodomizing me. That's horrible. And so, I had to deal with that at the age of 13. And here my brother's killing himself, so I was upset because my brother was killing himself. Then he started talking to me about the fact that he loved my body and he loved the way it felt and he loved what he was doing and all these sexual acts, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sitting here listening to my brother who's killing himself. Now he's telling me about recounting and recalling the memories of this sexual rape and sodomy that he did to me at the age of 8 years old and continued to sexually use me for probably about 6 months after that. So, this is horrific, I had to really, how are you going to cope with that? My mother was my main abuser, beating the crap out of me, knocking my head in, and seriously injuring me. You know what I mean? And so I really didn't want to push it with her, and so I just let it go. I was like, okay, I have to bury that again because I can't deal with that. Like, I was trying to stay alive in this home, and my mother was, telling me she was going to throw me out, always calling me a whore and a slut and a harlot and all this, and absolutely horrible stuff. And then not wanting any relationships. Didn't want a man to touch her, didn't want anybody to touch me really, and couldn't let myself get involved in a relationship. But then I finally met this guy. I wanted to go get on the pill, so I had to have a gynecologist check up, and I did. And that's when that gynecologist told me, your hymen has been ripped apart. Like, you've got scar tissue there. We know you were sexually abused as a child, and you want to come and tell us you're a virgin. Well, they were like, it's okay for you to tell us what happened. I said, no, I'm a virgin. Right? I had completely convinced myself that didn't happen, and that even though I knew, like, this is so absolutely horrific. So then what do? I tucked it away very nice and neat, for another, 20 years, right? And I know I have to deal with it. Like, I know at some point I have to deal with it. So that's what I've been doing for the last 6 months. 6 months, about a year, and really for dealing with it. About a year and a half ago is when I decided to allow myself to start dealing with it. But, like December will be 2 years, which is pretty wild. But it's taken me 6 months just to actually, be able to cope with this whole thing. And so it's absolutely horrific what this does to people. And that's why I challenge people. Like, had somebody tell me, what's the big deal about CSA? What's the big deal about child sexual abuse? And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. Who are you in the first place? And are you like, what? You enjoy this type of thing? You think this is okay? Are you maybe an abuser or something that you would even say something like that? Like, you have to be pretty sick and twisted in the mind to think that it's okay to sexually use somebody. I don't care if it's an adult or a child. It's incredibly wrong. My dad was sexually abusing my mother, raping her and beating her and treating her so horribly. And that was okay? No, that's not okay. Right? It's not okay to do to an adult, and it's not okay to do to a child. And so for somebody to tell me what's the big deal, what's the hype about child sexual abuse, I was like, okay, now I'm talking about it. Because now you're not going to even hear anything else from me but that, because I am really angry now, because I can't believe that somebody would say that to me. And I wouldn't name names. I would never name names. But this person just made the wrong choice to say that to me. They said it's the wrong person because, see, I've been nearly killed my whole life, right? And I didn't care. I was telling my parents to kill me by the time I was like 10 years old. I was like, just kill me, I don't care. Please, one more blow, do it. Because I want out, And so, I mean, I had guns to my head as a teenager, as a young adult, dealing with kidnap drug situations. And I was like, I don't pull the trigger, I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm dead anyway, so what are you going to do? Send me off to some sort of peaceful place, probably, right? So, there's people just barking up the wrong tree trying to get me to shut up because I'm like, I don't care, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, right? I'm going to keep talking, and the issue is that we all need to keep talking about this. We all do. Because otherwise it gets shoved under the carpet again, and nobody wants to hear about it. Nobody wants to see these abused kids. Nobody wants to see these children who are being raped and sodomized. Nobody wants to think about them because it's heinous, it's horrible, it's ugly, it's nasty. The only people that want to think about them are the people that are actually out here doing these things to these children, these sick abusers, right, who are very sick and mentally ill, right? They have to in order to be doing what they're doing. So, to me it's like, okay, if we're not talking about this and we're not angry and outraged, there's something wrong, right? Because this is not okay. It will never be okay. And for us to sit there and try to put a pretty picture around it or try to excuse it away or minimize it and say, oh, it's no big deal. I read an article where this one woman, I don't even know who she was or what her name was, but I read this article, and at the time I knew who she was, but I'm not going to mention it on the air here. But this person was supposed to be this, expert, and she comes out and says that child sexual abuse does not harm a child. I'm like, well, you can talk to me. I bled for months, you know what I mean, as an 8-year-old child with my insides torn out. You tell me that doesn't psychologically and physically damage a child? Now, I got some news for you. You know what I mean? That's sick and twisted. So that just tells me that that person is probably in cahoots with child sexual predators and wants this whole thing to be legalized. There are a lot of people out here who want adult child sexual relationships legalized. And if you don't believe me, just start checking out the petitions and the different petitions that are going around that where people are banding together to lobby the government. They're trying to get child sexual adult relationships legalized, right? That is so incredibly wrong. And as a society, if we don't stand up and say something about this, then, we're sick, right? So, yes, I don't mind speaking out against this stuff, and I don't mind being angry about it. And because I'm angry about what happened to me, I'm very angry about it. And anger is necessary. It's an important part of life, and anger means there's something wrong and we need to fix it. Anger, when it becomes destructive and abusive, is just toxic and it's just dysfunctional. But real anger that is handled properly is necessary. And I'm angry because there's a whole lot of people that want to excuse this away and they don't want anybody talking about it. Oh, don't talk about it. That's why I love Oprah. Right on, go Oprah, for bringing it out to the people and saying, this is what it is. With her shows, the 200 men who came out and who were victims of child sexual assault, child sexual abuse. And, good for her, And I mean, if I could say one thing about Oprah, it's like, she did a lot to open the minds of people and say, look, we have to talk about this, Like, we have to. We cannot sit by anymore and put a pretty little picture around this because it's not pretty. It's not pretty. It's the most heinous act ever. And yet we have people out here just think it's fine. Oh, no, it's not. It's not. And, and I'll do everything I can to make as much noise about this as I can. You bet I will. I'll be writing books. I mean, I'm already writing a book right now, but I'll be writing so many more books. And you will see you will see me screaming out about this everywhere under my own name. And I'm going to make so much noise, it's just not even going to be funny. Like, people will be reading this book around the world. Books, because I'm going to write many books. And, I hope that it does something to change this mess for these kids out here today. It's a little bit too late for me. I can't have children, Like my innocence was stolen. It was already stolen by my stupid parents. But then my brother just, helped fix that situation. And I mean, it's like, it's late for me. But the issue is it's not too late for these kids out here today, and we need to change this, right? So why are we not doing something about this as a whole, as a society? This should be a public outcry, and it is with the certain groups, right? I mean, obviously, I'm an advocate, so I mean, I run into the advocates. I know we're all banding together, but where's the outrage within the public sector? The minute I tell people what I do, I'm advocating to stop child abuse, nobody wants to talk to me. They're like, oh, good for you. Bye-bye. You're not welcome in our world because we don't want to know about you, right? We don't want to know about your pain. We don't want to know about these kids' pain. And I'm like, well, why not? Well, I'm not going away. So, this is absolutely horrific, and it has to stop. This is just nuts. But if you scroll down to the bottom of this page, there's a lot of information here. I've actually gone over this already on one of my shows. But they said that many factors can impact a survivor's response to his or her abuse. And this will be an adult survivor who's looking back and at the abuse and the impact they had on their life. And that these are the things that actually make a difference, really, or could make a difference, right? And that is whether they were believed or not. Being believed, if they told and they actually disclosed the abuse to somebody, whether or not that person believed them. Like I disclosed the abuse to my mother, and because after about I figure it's about 3 assaults, I was in a lot of pain. I was having a major infection from this sexual assault and sodomy, this rape, and it was still being sexually used, right? I told my mother, and my mother was my main abuser, who was beating me all the time, slapping me in the face, and horrifically, like, my blood flying around the room and stuff, like bloody noses. I mean, just absolutely horrible. My shows are graphic, I'm telling you, but I'm telling you the truth. And, she was just a horrible woman. And she was my main abuser, but I figured I'd tell her because my dad was insane and was trying to kill us. Like, he was trying to kill me and my sister by driving us off a cliff and stuff. So I thought, well, I'll take my chances with my mom because my dad was also trying to kill himself. And I just thought, okay, there's no sense in talking to him. So I told my mom, and I told her what was going on. And I told her, I did in so many words, told her that my brother was doing things to me at night and I was in pain. And, there was problems with my pee-pee, right? And my mom, I was 8 years old. I mean, come on. And my mom was like, I don't care. That's not my problem. What do you want me to do about it? That's your problem. You deal with it. But my mother hated me. See, so there you go. So my mother let this happen, right? So it's not that she didn't believe me. She knew that her 21-year-old son was raping me, sexually using me. She didn't care. Right? Now, how sick and twisted can that... I'm just one more case out here. And the issue is we see this in the papers all the time, and people are upset and astounded by it, and I'm a survivor of it. My mother wasn't sitting there watching now, mind you, while it was taking place. The issue is she didn't care. She didn't want to know about it. She just closed a blind eye. So I was believed. It's just nothing was done. Personal resources, availability of emotional support. Now, I know as an adult I have a lot of support from a lot of people, which is great. I'm so thankful for all the people that I have a lot of friends who do support me. And not family, but friends. And I do consider these people my family, not my real family. My real family is not my family anymore because I actually disowned them last year. And so, I have some awesome friends, right? And they do mean a whole lot to me, and they matter. And their help is very important to me. Financial resources to pay for treatment? No, I absolutely don't have anything like that. And time, that's important for people. And quite often survivors don't have the money to really, to the finances to actually get the help they need, right? Time between the abuse and the start of treatment or psychotherapy. I guess, if you had help as a child, you might come out of it a little bit better. But, it's hard when you go through all those years of just on your own, and it just manifests within your body, within your mind, within your heart, soul. And it's harder, I guess, as an adult then, to try to go through that stuff and fix it. It can be done, though. I've talked to a lot of survivors of child sexual abuse, and they've really made progress, you know what I mean? Like, real progress. And it's just awesome to see that, right? Current or chronic life stressors have a big issue, like if you're already stressed and things aren't going well and then you're dealing with healing, trying to heal from CSA incest or something, it can be pretty hard. That's what's going on with me right now. My sweetheart is terminally ill. He's only been given a few months to live. Like, he was in the hospital and nearly died a couple months ago. And so that was pretty harsh on me, and I was dealing with the CSA incest stuff here, and and I had to put that on the back burner because my sweetheart, of course, his life he's very important to me. So I was like, well, okay, I can't deal with that now because I got to deal with this, and it just became too much, Meantime, I was trying to hold down a full-time job, and the issue is I couldn't go to work because I had to go to the hospital to be with my sweetheart because they said he wasn't coming out and he was going to die in there, right? And they weren't going to resuscitate because he's terminally ill, right? And so I was sitting there waiting, just thinking, well, if he dies, then, well, he does, and if he doesn't, then, well, whatever. Not much I can do about it either way. And so I couldn't go to work because I was busy at the hospital. And so now I'm blackballed from work. So, it's pretty sad, right? Because these issues do happen, and they happen to people all the time. And some people think, oh, well, look at those losers. Why can't they just get their life together? It's like, you want to come walk in my shoes for about 2 minutes? I dare you. I dare you, I say, bring it on, you know what I mean? Like, I just can't imagine somebody being able to do it and be able to focus and get through the day and do what they need to do, and many people have come through so much tragic stuff and actually have made it. And those are the people in front of me with their hands up going, you can do it, right? And I'm like, well, thank you for being that support, that encouragement, because it's not easy, right? It's not easy for any of us. So age and maturity of the victim, response of family members or significant others. I told my sister a year and a half ago, December 2010, that December 2010, that so just not even a year ago, I guess, that my brother had done this, and our brother had sexually used me and raped and sodomized me, and she just sat there, no response. But my sister is disassociative and in denial. So what are you going to do about that? Prior knowledge about sex and sexuality, the degree to which the victim felt that they had some control over what happened, right? All kinds of issues, right? Had an optimistic outlook on the future. This might help them out, help an adult survivor to be able to feel pretty good about life, being given skills to avoid future risky situations, these types of things, right? There's lots of great information on this website, www.womensweb.ca, so I hope you will go check it out. And thanks for being here. We appreciate it. We've got about a minute left. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, one child abuse survivor to another. And then and then tomorrow night, I won't be on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, but I hope you will check it out. Elizabeth and Star will be on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio talking about teen issues and issues that teens can face. You know, the stuff that goes on that we all know from being teenagers in a teen's life can be pretty harsh. So hopefully we'll pass that show information on to people. You never know who could benefit from it, a teen or a parents of a teen, right? So thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. Have a great night. Take good care of yourselves. And if you need some information that I can find, just get a hold of me here on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook or wherever. But thanks for being here with me. It's almost been 2 years, like I said, coming up 2 years. And I thank everybody for taking the time to tune in and just to be a part of this with me. Thanks very much. Have a great night.